The calendar read October 22nd, 2013, a Thursday evening in Los Angeles, California, on Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood. 3 flights up in a building that smelled of new carpet and ambition, a private listening room called The Vault had been open for exactly 4 months. Its owner had spent $60,000 on the room. He had spent considerably less time thinking about who deserved to be in it. That gap in his thinking was about to become a problem. Because the man he had just asked to leave, quietly, firmly, in the way of a person who believes his politeness makes the insult smaller, was still standing in the doorway. And the man sitting in the back corner of the room, in a flat black hat pulled low over his eyes, had heard every word. The man in the hat had not moved. He was very still, the way a person goes still when they are deciding something. He decided. The vault occupied the entire 3rd floor. To get there, you took an elevator with a brushed steel interior and a keypad that required a 4-digit code printed on a membership card. The membership cards were matte black and heavy in the hand. The weight was intentional. It had been specified by the designer, and they cost $1,200 a year. The vault's owner, a man named Preston Cole, had decided early on that the price of entry was part of the product. Exclusivity, he had told the journalist who profiled him in a boutique music industry magazine, is its own form of curation. The room itself was something. The walls were lined with acoustic panels faced in Italian wool, charcoal and cream, installed by a firm out of Zurich that specialized in listening environments for people who cared about such things. The floor was poured concrete, polished to a matte finish, with a single Moroccan rug in the center that had cost more than most guitars in the building. Along the north wall, 22 guitars hung on individual cedar mounts, each one lit from below by a narrow strip of warm light. The cheapest among them was a 1968 Gretsch Country Gentleman at $11,000. The most expensive was a pre-war Martin 00045 at $62,000, kept behind glass in its own humidity-controlled alcove. The room smelled of cedar and the faint mineral sharpness of the concrete, and, underneath both of those, the expensive leather of the listening chairs. 4 of them, arranged in a shallow arc facing a pair of studio monitors the size of small refrigerators. Preston Cole had built this room because he loved music. That part was true, and it should not be forgotten. He had come up through the industry as a sound engineer, spent 17 years on other people's sessions, spent 11 more managing other people's money, and when he finally had enough of his own, he had done the thing he had always said he would do. He had built the room. He was proud of it in the way that is entirely reasonable. The pride had, over 4 months, curdled slightly into something else, into the belief that the room conferred value on the people inside it, rather than the people conferring value on the room. That belief was about to be corrected. Her name was Dolores Reyes, and she was 71 years old. And she had not intended to end up on the 3rd floor of the vault that evening. She had intended to visit her nephew, who worked the building's front desk 2 nights a week while finishing his degree. She had taken the wrong elevator. The building had 2, the service and the main, and she had pushed the wrong button in the lobby, and arrived at the 3rd floor landing with her canvas shopping bag and her coat, and the slight bewilderment of a woman who knows she is somewhere she did not plan to be. The door to the vault was propped open. A session had just ended. 3 men in good shoes were leaving. Dolores stood in the doorway looking in. She saw the guitars on the wall. She had not been near guitars in 11 years, not since the stroke took the fine motor control from her left hand. The left hand that had spent 43 years pressing chords on a nylon string guitar in the kitchen of a house in Boyle Heights, playing the songs her mother had taught her, and the songs she had taught herself, and the songs she had written on afternoons when the house was quiet, and the feeling that had no other outlet went into the guitar instead. She stood in the doorway looking at the guitars on the wall, her canvas bag in her hand, and her expression was the expression of a woman looking at something she had put away and thought she had stopped missing. Preston Cole saw her from across the room. He crossed to her quickly, not rudely, not yet, and positioned himself in the doorway with the particular body language of a man blocking a space without technically standing in someone's way. "This is a private room," he said. His voice was pleasant. "Calibrated, member access only. Do you have a card?" Dolores looked at him. "No, I'm sorry. I took the wrong elevator." He smiled with the top half of his face only. "No worries at all. The lobby is 2 floors down." He gestured toward the elevator. "The guitars you're looking at start at $11,000. This is a $60,000 room. It's not really a browsing situation." He said it pleasantly. That was the thing about it. He said it as though the information were purely factual, as though the implication, "You are not the kind of person who belongs here," were simply a law of physics that he was helpfully explaining. As though she would nod and understand and go. Dolores looked at the wall of guitars for one more moment. Her left hand, the one that no longer did what she asked of it, closed around the strap of her canvas bag. "Of course," she said. "I'm sorry to interrupt." She turned toward the elevator. In the back corner of the room, in one of the 4 leather chairs, a man in a flat black hat set down the glass of water he had been holding. He stood up. "Before this story goes any further, has anyone ever made you feel like a room wasn't built for you? Like the price of something was a verdict about your worth? Tell me in the comments. I read every one of them." He had been brought in that afternoon by a producer named Marcus, who had booked the room for a private playback session. The session had ended 40 minutes ago. Marcus had left to take a call. Carlos had stayed in the chair because the chair was comfortable, and the monitors were excellent, and he had been on the road for 9 days. And a quiet room in Los Angeles was not something you left before you had to. He was wearing what he always wore. Mustard yellow linen shirt. Soft from washing. Flat black hat. Turquoise ring on his left hand. Silver bracelets at the wrist. The old pick in his shirt pocket, edges worn smooth. He looked like a man who had spent a long time being comfortable in himself and had stopped thinking about how that looked to other people. Nobody in the vault knew who he was. The 3 men in good shoes had nodded at him on their way out. The nod you give a stranger in an elevator. Preston Cole had glanced at him when Marcus introduced him earlier and filed him under session musician and moved on. That was fine. Carlos was used to being filed. He crossed the room now without hurrying. He reached Dolores at the elevator. He stood beside her and looked at Preston Cole. "She came to see the guitars," he said. "So did I when I first came in." He looked at the wall. "Can she look at them?" Preston's eyes moved between the 2 of them. His calculation was fast and visible. An old woman in a coat. A man in a linen shirt. Neither of them carrying the specific posture of money. But Marcus had vouched for the man in the hat, and Marcus spent real money in this room, and the situation had a friction to it that Preston did not want to increase. "Of course," Preston said. "Smooth, recovered. Take your time." Dolores looked at Carlos. He tilted his head slightly toward the guitars. She followed him to the wall. She walked slowly in front of them. Carlos walked beside her. He did not speak. He let her look. She stopped in front of a guitar near the end of the row. Not one of the expensive ones. A nylon string classical, a 1970s student model, the kind of thing that had ended up in this room by accident. A consignment piece Preston had taken in from someone's estate, priced at $200 because it was barely worth the wall space. It was dusty. The saddle had a small crack in it. The tuning machines were original and stiff. Dolores looked at it for a long time. "I used to play," she said, "to no one in particular. Nylon strings. For 40 years. Carlos looked at the guitar. "What happened?" She raised her left hand slightly and then lowered it. "Stroke, 11 years ago. The fingers don't press the way they need to." Carlos looked at her hand. He looked at the guitar. "What could you do with it now?" he asked. "If someone put it in your hands." She considered this with the seriousness the question deserved. "The right hand still works. The strumming. I could do that. The left," she paused. "Open chords, maybe. The ones that don't need much." She looked at her hand again. I don't know. I haven't tried. Carlos took the guitar off the wall. The dust on the body left a faint line on his shirt where it rested. He turned and looked at Preston Cole. May I? Preston looked at the guitar. $200. He looked at the room. He looked at the woman in the coat. Something in him wanted to say no. He said yes. Carlos sat down in the listening chair. He held the guitar correctly for a moment, feeling its weight, checking the neck with his thumb. The tuning was off, a month off at least, and he tuned it string by string, slowly, until it was right. Then he held it out to Dolores. She sat in the chair beside him. She took the guitar with her right hand and settled it against her body. The muscle memory was immediate. 43 years of sitting exactly this way. The body of the guitar fitting into the space between her ribs and her hip, the way a tool fits into a practiced grip. Her left hand moved to the neck. The fingers pressed. The first finger found the second fret of the D string. The second finger found the third fret of the A. The third finger moved toward the third fret of the B and stopped. It would not fully depress. The stroke had taken that much. She looked at Carlos. Open G, he said quietly. Try open G, just the right hand. She reformed her left hand, one finger, two, into the shape of an open G chord, the shape that asks least of the fingers. She strummed once with her right hand. The sound that came into the room was thin, imperfect. The saddle crack gave the G string a slight buzz. The guitar was worth $200 and sounded close to it. Carlos leaned forward. Again, he said. She strummed again. You're rushing it, he said. Not a correction, an observation, the way you observe that it's raining. You're afraid it won't sound right, so you're moving faster than the music needs. Slow it down. The chord doesn't care if you take your time getting to it. She looked at him. She strummed again, slowly this time, letting the right hand fall through the strings without pushing. The sound changed. It was still thin. The guitar was still worth $200. But the chord rang and settled and did not apologize for what it was. Dolores looked at her hands. Carlos took the guitar from her gently. He settled it in his own lap. He looked at Preston Cole, who had drifted to the center of the room and was standing there with the uncertain posture of a man who is watching something happen in his space that he did not cause and cannot stop. Carlos played. He did not announce it. He did not close his eyes or adjust his posture or do any of the things that signal performance. He simply began, the way you begin a conversation with someone you have been thinking about for a while. The first phrase was 3 notes, quiet and unhurried, the nylon strings buzzing faintly at the saddle crack and not caring. The second phrase was the same 3 notes rearranged, asking a question with the same words. Then the music opened. It was not a song anyone in the room had heard before. It was not a technique. It was a feeling given a shape, the feeling of a kitchen in Boyle Heights on a quiet afternoon, of a hand that remembered something the rest of the body had been told to forget, of 43 years of playing and 11 years of silence, and the specific weight of a guitar settled against your ribs like something that had been waiting. Carlos did not know that. He could not have known it. But the music knew it somehow, the way music reaches into the right place when the player is listening carefully enough to what the room is carrying. The crack in the saddle buzzed. The tuning machines were stiff and slightly off by now, the strings having slipped in the old mechanism. The guitar was worth $200 in a $60,000 room, and it sounded not like $60,000. It sounded like something older than money. Preston Cole had stopped breathing in any conscious way. The woman who had been sitting at a small desk near the window, Preston's assistant, reviewing booking requests, had set her laptop closed without noticing she had done it. Dolores sat with her hands in her lap and her eyes closed. Her left hand was open, fingers spread slightly, as if reaching toward something just out of range. Carlos played the last phrase slowly. 4 notes. A pause between each one, each pause the length of a breath. The last note was the high E string, open, plucked with the nail of his index finger, held until it became something the room absorbed rather than something the room heard. Silence. Preston Cole's mouth was open. He closed it. He looked at the guitar. The $200 guitar with the dusty body and the cracked saddle and the stiff tuning machines. He looked at the man in the flat black hat. He had the look of a man who has built something expensive and just learned that the expense was not the point. His assistant was looking at her phone. Then at Carlos. Then at her phone again. "Oh my God," she said softly. Preston looked at her. She turned the phone around. The blood left the upper part of his face in a way that was visible from across the room. Carlos set the guitar on the chair beside him. He reached into his shirt pocket and drew out the old pick, edges smoothed by 40 years of handling, and set it on the body of the $200 guitar. He looked at Dolores. "The hand remembers," he said. "Even when you think it's forgotten, you just have to give it something to remember with." Dolores looked at the guitar. She looked at the pick. She looked at her left hand. "I haven't touched one in 11 years, she said. "I know," he said. I could hear that. He paused. I could also hear the 43 years before that. She pressed her lips together. Her chin did not move. She had the dignity of a woman who has been through more than this and does not spend tears carelessly. Carlos stood. He looked at Preston Cole. Preston took a step forward. His hand came up slightly, the gesture of a man about to offer something large and compensatory. "Mr. Santana, please, whatever you want from this room, it's yours." The Martin. The Gretsch. "Anything, I had no idea." "Give her the guitar," Carlos said. He looked at the $200 classical on the chair, the one she played. "Give it to her." Preston looked at it. "Of course." "Absolutely, and just that one," Carlos said. "It's the one she was talking to." He tilted his hat brim toward Dolores. He crossed the room toward the elevator. "Mr. Santana," Preston said. He said it like a man trying to hold a door open that is already closing. "I'm sorry for what I said. To her. I am genuinely sorry." Carlos looked at him from across the room. "Tell her that," he said. "Not me." The elevator opened. He stepped in. The brushed steel doors closed. Preston Cole stood in the middle of his $60,000 room for a long time after that. Then he crossed to where Dolores was sitting, and he apologized. Properly, without qualification, without the pleasant calibration. He said what he had done, and he said it was wrong, and he did not explain it. Dolores listened. She accepted it with the same quiet dignity she had shown at the door. The dignity of a woman who is accustomed to being owed apologies she does not always receive. She left with the guitar under her arm. Her nephew met her at the lobby elevator, confused about where she had been. She told him she had taken the wrong one. She did not explain further. She restrung it that weekend with the help of her nephew, who looked up the process on his phone and handed her tools and said nothing when it took longer than the video suggested. The crack in the saddle she left alone. It gave the G-string a buzz she had come to think of as a characteristic rather than a flaw. She plays every morning now, 30 minutes before the rest of the house wakes up, at the kitchen table, the guitar in her lap, and the window above the sink showing whatever the morning has brought. The left hand does not do everything she asks of it. She has stopped asking it for everything. She asks it for what it can give, and it gives that. And the music that results is not the music of 43 years ago, but it is music. Her granddaughter, who is 9, has started sitting across the table in the mornings to watch. She does not say anything. She watches the hands. Last month she asked if she could try. Dolores showed her where to put her fingers for an open G chord. The girl pressed down and strummed. The chord buzzed and rang. Her face was the face of someone hearing something come out of their own hands for the first time. Dolores recognized it immediately. She has been waiting her whole life to see it in someone else. Preston Cole made changes to the vault over the following year. The 4-digit keypad came down. The membership price was halved. On the wall where the $200 classical had hung, He put a small card that said, "This space held a $200 guitar." On October 22, 2013, it was the most important instrument in the room. He left the nail in the wall. The guitar is not for sale. It is not in this room. It is in a kitchen in Boyle Heights, leaning against a chair, waiting for morning. On this channel, we make videos to carry what lives inside Carlos Santana's heart to the next generation. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Let's close with something Carlos Santana once said. "The guitar is not the music. The music is inside the person. The guitar is just the door."